Welcome to UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Join us as we delve into the world's most pressing issues and learn how the people inside work toward a better future for everyone around the world.
Coming up on UN Insider.
Life-saving relief is not getting to people who have endured months of relentless assault at anywhere near the scale needed.
Dire concern about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza as millions face hunger and disease. And the conflict threatens to spread to other parts of the Middle East.
Tensions are also sky high in the Red Sea and beyond, and may soon be impossible to contain.
Every decade since 1990 has been warmer than the previous decade, so on these longer time scales, it's very clear the warming.
Another year of record temperatures and urgent calls for action. Can we avoid a climate change tipping point? A symphony beneath the sea. Why scientists are listening to underwater inhabitants to aid conservation efforts. Next.
Conflict in the Middle East region and the dire humanitarian situation remains a top priority for diplomats here at UN headquarters.
The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says there is only one solution to help address all the issues in Gaza, and that is an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. The situation continues to deteriorate as humanitarian workers call for decisive action to be taken to allow aid access, especially to northern Gaza.
While there have been some steps to increase the flow of humanitarian assistance into Gaza, life-saving relief is not getting to people who have endured months of relentless assault at anywhere near the scale needed. The long shadow of starvation is stalking the people of Gaza, along with disease, malnutrition, and other health threats. And I'm deeply troubled by the clear violation of international humanitarian law that we are witnessing.
Guterres spoke to members of the media here at the UN headquarters on Monday and says he fears for the spillover effects the situation in Gaza is having on the entire Middle East region. This as tensions continue to escalate as the Houthis attack US-owned ships in the Red Sea after the US and allies carried out airstrikes against the militia group to stop their assault on international shipping.
Cauldron of tensions in the occupied West Bank is boiling over with heightened violence, compounding an already dire fiscal crisis for the Palestinian Authority. Tensions are also sky high in the Red Sea and beyond, and may soon be impossible to contain. I have serious concerns about daily exchanges of fire across the Blue Line. These risks triggering a broader escalation between Israel and Lebanon and profoundly affecting regional stability.
Guterres also said that the UN's aid operations face significant hurdles at the Gaza border, as vital materials which include life-saving medical equipment and parts which are critical for the repair of water facilities and infrastructure have been rejected with little or no explanation. The Secretary-General added that the levels of civilian killings in Gaza are unprecedented during his years as Secretary-General. And while he made his address from New York, his colleagues from the UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, who had visited Gaza over the weekend, said that the past 100 days has seen the largest displacement of Palestinian people since 1948. The organization says overcrowded and unsanitary shelters have become home to more than 1.4 million people, and there is a lack of everything, from food to hygiene to privacy. Jody Jacobs, CGTN, New York.
UN officials, world leaders, and members of the global business community are in Switzerland this week for the World Economic Forum.
这些年，我们对世界经济增长贡献率
China's contribution to global economic growth has remained at around 30%. Last year, the Chinese economy rebounded with an estimated growth of around 5.2%, beating the 5% target set at the beginning of the year.
GDP 的增幅在 5.2左右。
Premier Li Qiang says China is open for business and welcomes greater foreign investment from around the world. The UN Secretary General also spoke at the gathering. In his address, Antonio Guterres touched on a range of topics that are impacting the global economy and sustainable global development, from conflict to climate and the growth of artificial intelligence.
Every new interaction of generative AI increases the risk of serious unintended consequences. The technology has enormous potential for sustainable development, but as the International Monetary Fund has just warned us, it is very likely it will worsen inequality in the world. And some powerful tech companies are already pursuing profits with a clear disregard for human rights, personal privacy, and social impact.
Coming up,
We are living through climate collapse in real time, and the impact is devastating.
UN Insider.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Record global temperatures and extreme weather events were a hallmark of 2023. It went down as the hottest year on record. Will 2024 continue that trend? Scientists are releasing a new global climate outlook.
It's getting hotter, wetter, and wilder.
I have never seen anything like this before.
2023 smashed records.
Yeah, watch out, don't touch that metal.
With dramatically high temperatures worldwide, creating the warmest year on record. Much of the world baked. Extreme heat waves saw July and August become the two hottest months ever recorded.
I often get asked, are you surprised by this? But unfortunately, no, we're not surprised. So I've been in this field for more than 30 years. Every decade since 1990 has been warmer than the previous decade. So on these longer time scales, it's very clear the warming.
Data from the United Nations World Meteorological Organization reveals the annual average global temperature reached 1.2 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, alarmingly close to the 1.5 degrees target that countries are trying to keep below. Also monitoring the weather, the US-based National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Similarly depressing news from their scientists, with the prediction there's a 1 in 3 chance 2024 will be even hotter. Leaders at last month's COP28 summit in Dubai promised to transition away from fossil fuels. But many warn time is running out.
We are living through climate collapse in real time, and the impact is devastating. We must also go further and faster in protecting people from climate chaos.
And aside from last year's record heat, parts of the Northern Hemisphere are now contending with extreme winter weather, with blizzards, tornadoes and floods all forecast. Nick Harper, CGTN, Washington.
Hydrogen could become an important part of the world's efforts to reduce emissions and control climate change. It's also at the center of a green energy partnership between China and Germany. Natalie Carney explains.
Here at the Center for Applied Aviation Research, engineers are developing fuel cell systems for use in commercial aircrafts. The key ingredient is hydrogen. It's produced using electrolysis, with so-called green hydrogen being made using electricity generated by renewable energy. Hydrogen doesn't emit greenhouse gases when it's burned, and it can create a large amount of power.
The bigger you get, the more advantage of hydrogen will come. And we need it for the agricultures. We need it for steel industry. We need it somehow for everyone. And yeah, especially now emerging is like the heavy duty transport sector and aviation.
Germany is investing close to $10 billion towards its goal of 10 gigawatts of electrolysis generation capacity by 2030. Yet domestic demand for hydrogen is expected to be 3 times higher.
We need to scale it up, to get the amounts we need.
That's where China, which accounts for around 1/3 of global hydrogen production, could prove a strategic partner for Germany.
We can see in China they have huge amounts of production already. This scaling up process in the next years we need in Germany, and I think this is something we need to learn from them.
Some companies are already collaborating. German automotive supplier Bosch has begun making fuel cell power modules in China, while Chinese company Jiangsu Guofu Hydrogen Energy Equipment has unveiled plans to build a 1 gigawatt electrolysis factory in Brandenburg, Germany.
While Germany and China explore areas of partnership in the production and application of hydrogen, there's also vast cooperation opportunities in the area of education to develop this burgeoning field.
Heinze Academy is one of the first vocational training institutes to offer a professional curriculum in hydrogen and fuel cell technology in Germany. They see the need for trained individuals to develop the country's hydrogen sector and the potential China has to offer.
Experts say 10 years ago, Europe has been 10 years ahead of China. Today, China is 10 years ahead of us and has a higher pace in development. And we're trying to discuss or to find out with them how we can cooperate in the area of training. If we train Chinese people and Chinese people train us and we interchange skilled workers, this is the way that helps us to reach our common goal to decarbonize globally.
Berlin is working on a policy framework that will encourage further much-needed investment in the hydrogen sector. But further cooperation is required if Germany is going to find and train the skilled professional it needs to establish itself as a major technology provider and importer of green hydrogen. Natalie Carney for CGTN in Hamburg.
The United Nations Institute for Training and Research is a principal training arm of the UN. It has been around for 7 decades, working on developing stronger diplomats around the world, but they do even more. That is why I sat down with its chair, Ambassador Luis Gallegos. Ambassador Gallegos, you have been a lifelong career diplomat for Ecuador for many years. You've also represented your country at the United Nations. You've witnessed so much change and conflict over the years. So when you look around at what's happening today, all around the world, what comes to your mind?
Well, I'm very much concerned in the fracture of the multilateral system. I agree with the Secretary General that we have a system which is not operating correctly in the sense that we created it. The rupture between the principles and the guidance of a worldwide system which was geared to peace is failing humanity. The problems we are facing as a human race, like climate change, are one of the most particular threats we have. We've just surpassed, maybe not surpassed, but almost at the point of ending the pandemic, which I think was the most complicated conflict we've had in modern times. It affected every one of the 193 members of the United Nations. But it also affected each one of us. We all know people who have died. We were affected by COVID. And I think that we are still in the stage of analyzing what the actual effects were.
UNITAR was created in the 1960s to train young diplomats, and there was, at that time, a lot of conflict in the world, much like what we see right now. What do you see in the diplomats, the young diplomats especially, that are working across the world today to try to solve some of these conflicts?
We train diplomats, but we train 500,000 people a year from different segments of the world, not only bureaucracies, but also from the private sector. What does it mean to diplomats? It means that they acquire the knowledge of the complexities of the UN, the historical protocols that you require to present a resolution, how to negotiate to build consensus, how to not lock into positions that are obstructive, the extraordinary number of issues that we are dealing with. There is no way human beings can adequately know, if they are not trained and taught and learn about the complexities, from climate change to health, from issues of migration to refugees, issues that deal with political and economic circumstances. So I think it's a very valuable issue to have the diplomats that go into the UN, that are posted to the UN, to acquire those capabilities, and then the ones who are in the UN to acquire a better knowledge of capacity building of what these subject matters are, with the foremost professors and experts in the fields.
Just before the pandemic, in the year 2020, UNITAR delivered some 900 learning activities benefiting over 300,000 people. How did the pandemic change your goals, and how did UNITAR adapt throughout the pandemic to continue?
Well, I think the pandemic made UNITAR more relevant in the sense of distance learning. We all were secluded in our houses. We were blocked into this issue, and so the context of capacity building was based on Zoom and other mechanisms of teaching. We still do this. I think that will continue in many of the cases.
There's a big project about energy change and environment in China. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
We work with China in a number of projects, as we do with other countries. Of course, China is very relevant. Climate change is one of the complexities of modern civilization. We are finding natural disasters increasing in their dynamics. We are finding that it's creating modern migration patterns, the increase of deserts, the lack of water. All these issues have to be dealt with in the context of what the United Nations holds very dearly, which is trying to decrease the heating of the world. Now, if we can be able to adequately look into solutions to that problem, we are looking into the solutions of how humanity will respond to this.
Ambassador, one of your personal crusades is working for the elderly, senior welfare. And as we know, people these days are living much longer lives. Is getting trained, learning new things, an important part in helping this segment of the population?
First of all, I'm 77, so that's an inspiration by itself. But the truth of the matter is that I was very, very affected by the deaths that were caused in the pandemic to the age group that was aging. On a good day in New York, 1,000 people would die, and most of them would be elderly. I was posted, and I was in the lockdowns in New York and during the pandemic, and I accepted being foreign minister of Ecuador because of the pandemic to get the vaccines that we required. So I passionately became convinced that we required a UN convention to protect the rights of persons who are aging. We are 1 billion people who are aging at the moment. We're more aging than children being born. So the world has changed, and we require an initiative of governance that will make the possibility of a negotiation of a convention very similar to the one that I chaired, which is the Convention for Persons with Disabilities, which is probably the most successful convention of human rights that the UN has, because it covers 187 countries. It protects 1.3 billion people. And disability is something that you were born with a disability, you may acquire it during your life by accidents, by sickness by war, as we see every day in Ukraine and Gaza. But when you age, when you get to 65, you have 85% possibilities of having a disability. So the two are interlinked in a way that I find is very important in the protection of the dignity of persons who are aging, who are disabled, and who are vulnerable in the long term.
Ambassador Luis Gallegos, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Coming up.
There's a lot of mystery involved and a lot of unknown, which as a scientist is really exciting.
Holding guns. Word protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Life below water is the 14th Sustainable Development Goal. Water covers most of the Earth, and beneath the oceans is a world full of unique sights and sounds. Francis Coe shows us how scientists are deciphering those sounds to aid sustainability efforts.
The underwater world has a lot to say. Luckily, Ella Kim is listening.
The sounds are surprising.
Kim is a doctoral candidate at Scripps Institution of Oceanography in San Diego, California, one of the world's oldest and largest centers for ocean and earth science research. And Kim's ears are specifically attuned to one marine animal.
I study fish acoustics, so specifically the sounds that fish make underwater. I feel like a fish detective.
Yes, fish make sounds specific to each species.
They'll sound like drums or helicopters or like boinging pogo sticks. Some of them are like very funky. And then from there, we're able to use a clustering algorithm.
Kim invited us to her lab for a fish concert of sorts, audio of various sounds from fish living along the California coast.
They'll do something called a chorus, which if you can imagine sitting on the seafloor, hundreds of fish of the same species will sing all together for hours at a time over multiple months.
The collective sounds are nocturnal love songs used by male fish to attract females.
Kind of like how birds will show off their feathers, fish do the same with their song.
Kim and her team capture the sounds from hundreds of meters underwater with the help of sophisticated equipment, including a microphone placed on the sea floor. Then, data from up to 6 months' worth of sounds is collected.
If you can imagine going through these data sets day by day, hour by hour, is not only extremely time intensive, but also costly.
And that's where artificial intelligence plays a crucial part. Kim helped develop the method for computers to sift through all that data and weed out fish sounds from other noises. normally a tedious task for even the most experienced scientist.
It becomes challenging when there's this cocktail of a bunch of fish all singing at the same time.
The technology can analyze years' worth of data in just a few days. The information helping provide a better understanding of what fish exist, where they're located, and how they're proliferating.
So we can better understand when fish mating seasons are happening, where fish are generally, and when they're reproducing. And this is really important in terms of fish conservation and fisheries management.
Important as 3 billion people around the world depend on fish as their primary protein source. Fish also help pull carbon from the atmosphere, alleviating the effects of climate change. Kim's future research concentrates on how warming waters are having an impact on populations, indicated by how low or high-pitched the fish sounds are.
So my next project that I'm working on.
Kim says more clues have yet to be discovered about our fish friends. This fish detective will surely be on the case.
There's a lot of mystery involved and a lot of unknown, which as a scientist is really exciting.
Frances Coe, CGTN, San Diego.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN insider.